So welcome to this Techability webinar on travel training and assistive technology. It's a topic that's close to my heart, as I worked as a travel trainer at National Star College, a specialist college, and I worked with young people to help them to navigate from either home to school or home to college or home to a workplace. And that started from where you'd be working just one-to-one with the individual, just getting them used to the journey, all the different things that they have to deal with. Then you'd make the journey with them, then you'd be following behind, and eventually they'd make the journey independently. So that's my background. And yeah, have we got any travel trainers in today? Do you want to put your hand up if you're a travel trainer, or if that's part of your role? Oh yeah, the hands up signal, yeah, symbol should be there. You should be able to press it and then choose thumbs up or something like that. Okay. Thanks, Tabitha. You're a Derwent's travel trainer. And yeah, thanks, Jess. Thanks, Claire. Yeah, I thought we'd have some independent living skills people here as well. Hi, Suleiman. Great, Kath. Okay, great. So it sounds like a lot of people here are here today, as well as travel trainers or people who are supporting people doing travel training. It's a highly requested subject. I wanted to do this actually probably for years, really. I was trying to find someone who knew the assistive technology side of things and the travel training side of things. I hadn't found anyone, so I've decided to do it myself. So just bear in mind, I haven't worked as a travel trainer for a little while. I'm quite interested in doing a second webinar where people come back to me with what's worked, what hasn't, what you're using as well. And yeah, just sharing any case studies and things like that. So if you're interested in that, just please stay in touch. I'd love to hear how you get on. So one of the things, just before we get started, some of you may have seen this, especially if you've attended previous training or you're in the world of assistive technology, but I wanted to definitely go through it because it's really relevant for what we're talking about today. It's the set model, and it's a way that you can approach what technology you need for specific learners or specific students or service users if you're not working with students, what environment they're going to be using that in, what task they're going to be completing, and then once you've got all of that, you can look at what tools they need. So I'd suggest that for lots of these learners, they'll be in a different environment than usual. There'll be different risks as opposed to their college environment or home environment. The tasks they'll be completing will generally be to have an independent or supported journey. And I just want you to kind of think very carefully about the student and what their needs are. We can't just say that every student will need a particular app or every student will need a particular type of tool. So just break that down, and it can help to just have a page with split into 4 where you put the 4 different elements in there, and you can start thinking about which tools are right for the students or service users. So what can AT do? It can help you plan for journeys, looking at the weather, maps. You can have help along the journeys as well, so reading information, contacting others. There's payment, there's telling the time, there's much more as well. So we're going to start looking at some things that can stop us from doing this. So just to think about making plans for no tech. So if the students lost their phone, or the individuals lost their phone, or it's broken or something like that, what will that mean for the journey? Think ahead for that. If it's a key piece of technology that they need, do we need to cancel the journey, or are there non-tech ways we can offer the same support? Check the data requirements of some of the apps. Some of them will need data to work. Some of them you can download elements to it, and balance this against the signal on their journey. If you're quite remote, that might be quite different if you're traveling in the middle of the city. Have a test of the tools yourself first. It's a really great way to get to know what and anticipate issues and anticipate support for the individuals. Reassess as apps often update and change, so you can often have to rethink things. So it's always good to offer a backup option as well. Starting something that can make things look a little bit differently on a phone. This is specifically for Android, is Launcher. It'll make the phone easier to use through symbols, larger text, customizable interface. It costs $10. And then there are Big Phone and Big SMS apps, which are separate apps for those tasks. I think you can buy them all together as a package as well. And the thinking behind starting with the devices here is that if you can make the devices accessible, then a lot of the other apps and tools that you'll have for the individuals will then be accessible. So within the devices themselves, you can have text-to-speech, where you're having the text on the screen read out to you. So look at the apps themselves. Can they have text that can be read out to the learner or individual? Is that helpful for them? Speech to text, so can they use their voice as input? That could be straight into text, or actually it could be speech using WhatsApp and using the voice notes there. Those are quite useful for updates between an individual and yourselves, and you can even give them a breakdown of their routes and things like that, just as a reminder. Visual options as well. You can change lots of different things on the screens to make the text larger, to make things clearer for individuals. Shortcuts as well, really useful. Much more, and we're not going to go specifically into that because that's a whole webinar or training session in itself, but we can provide resources for that separately. Specifically within iPhones, you can go to settings and accessibility, and there's all the different settings there, and I'll send these slides out, so there'll be the link there with all the accessibility features on iPhones. Same for Android as well. So the accessibility settings are under settings as well. So starting off with things that we can plan a journey before we get started. So Google Maps is useful to plan routes. I know when I was working as a travel trainer that Street View was fairly recent then, but I used it for myself to understand what the risks were and where the best crossing points would be for roads, what the bus stops look like, and I could even use screenshots of those and use them in support documentation for the individuals. This can then also be used for the individuals who are making the journeys, just to get them used to the journey, especially if if they don't deal very well with being out and about in public with a lot going on. This can be a calm kind of way to have a look through the journey beforehand. And just really go over things and reinforce things. So a lot of the students that I worked with were on the autistic spectrum, and they needed a lot of support with kind of that confidence and overwhelm and things like that, because it's an awful lot to take on to do an independent journey. There's a lot of skills there, and there's a lot going on, and there's a lot that can change as well. So anything that we can do to make this a bit easier to begin with, it is a really good idea. Consider offline maps. If the individual is good with maps and they want to continue using that, then you can download the maps for them, and that will help them if they lose data or if they're out of signal or whatever else. And you can also start and favorite key locations so that when they see them on the map, it's easier to find them. And on the right hand side there, I've just set the depart at and arrive by feature, which you can use with Google, which can help you anticipate traffic, and it can help you anticipate how long it will take to walk a distance or bus a distance. So it can help you to start planning that journey with the individual as well. Live view is a bit experimental, and this is one of those features I'd love you to try. I had a quick go and it worked for me, but I'd like to try it in different locations and different settings. So in Google Maps, you would search for where you want to go, and this has to be on the phone. You tap directions, and then above the map in the travel mode toolbar, there's an icon indicating walking. So you click that, and in the bottom center there's a live view. And I must have ignored this symbol so many times, every time I've seen it. but I actually tried it and it works. The first time it didn't work for me. I had to go back. I think it was the third time that it actually kind of loaded up and worked for me. But I think the picture that we've got on the right hand side shows an individual making their way through an inside space in a station. So I think it might be really good for those kind of inner city or kind of places where there might be quite a lot of complication. And you can see there's guiding arrows there that lead you the way. So experimental, but I might use this alongside the students or learners, and it might be an interesting thing just for them to try as well. It's always good to be interested in what you're doing. Wheelmap.org, I had a look at a few different apps for this, and this was the one that seemed to have the most contributions to it, because there are lots of apps out there that are really useful in terms of accessible locations, but they just don't have enough user input. This one seemed to have a lot more. Again, be interested to see what you find, but it's free, it's on Android, iOS, and it relies on users filling out information. So actually, if you're a college and you make lots of journeys into an area, you could submit some of the reviews yourself to those locations, and then they're there for the individuals making those journeys from then on. So it can be a real community type project. Citymapper, this claims to cover 90% of the UK. They focused on cities at first, but they've expanded. And yeah, you can tell the app where you want to go, suggest a route, transport methods, and it'll factor in real-time data on disruptions on routes. So this is quite a useful, Google Maps can give you a kind of outline and an idea, but Citymapper seems more up to date and has some more features that are based around public transport that seem useful. There's good visuals on there, so symbol support really within the app, which is useful. And when I tested it, it seemed to work with the text-to-speech functions on my Android phone. Got UK bus checker, and this is available on Android and iOS. It's free. They claim to cover the whole of the UK, which is 300,000 bus stops. You can check the timetable, get live departures from your nearest stop, or use journey planning features to prepare for upcoming trips. Sounds like it'd be something really useful when you're planning those. And there's also a stop alert feature to prevent them from missing the stop. I haven't tested that, so be good to know again if that works. You might need to have your phone settings set to certain things so that you would get that alert. And I guess it would depend on how heavy a sleeper they are and how early in the morning they're traveling. Where is public toilet might be useful for individuals who need to find kind of accessible toilets along their route. Uses GPS. It's an Android app, and the iOS equivalent, so for iPhones, is Flush. And it gives the accessibility details, and it links with Google Maps, so you can find things through that way. Digital assistants can be quite useful before setting off as well. I'm thinking of building things into a routine really with an Amazon Alexa, Google Home, or even built into their device, their iPhone or their Android itself, where you can check the weather, or perhaps have something so that it would come up with the weather, so to prompt the individual to think, might need a coat today. Oh, it's hot, I'm just going to wear shorts, that kind of thing. Setting the notifications to leave on time. So I know for some individuals, you might need a kind of 20-minute warning, 10-minute warning, right, it's time to go, that kind of thing. Giving reminders of things to bring, and that could be updated as well, especially if you share an account with an individual. You could update those reminders if they need particular things on particular days. Again, we could do a whole webinar on digital assistants, so just let me know if you need any further assistance or guidance or signposting on that area. So once we're en route, there is some different apps that can support us. Be My Eyes is specifically designed for those with visual impairments to see the world around them. So the example here is someone using the app to ring someone and say, which can of these is tomatoes? But thinking about travel training, we could actually have it to read a timetable, we could have it to read a sign, we could have it to ask them which direction is the pavement closure pointing. And it's visual impairment, but I do wonder if they would allow print impairments as well, which would include those with kind of dyslexia, or those who would struggle to read for other reasons. I thought it might be a good, reliable app, because you know that you're always going to find a volunteer. There's always going to be someone available there, which we often can't offer when we're doing travel training. We can't promise that we'll always be there for those individuals. Again, one to try, but it might be useful as a backup option. Tell me the time, very simple, but obviously telling the time en route can be really important. So it's a talking clock. So for those who might struggle to read the time, or they might struggle to see, then you can just tap on it and it will read it out. So the format would be, it's 11:47. You can change AM or PM based on your phone settings. So you can't do that in the app. You have to go into the phone set time settings. And you combine that with a talking timetable in WhatsApp or Messenger or Google Keep. And you can actually help individuals to be completely independent in terms of they can tell what time it is and they know what time they need to be at places. And that can be a real breakthrough. For iOS, you can use the inbuilt clock and just use read aloud, which is an inbuilt feature in iOS to read it out. So no separate apps needed for iOS. Brain in Hand, we do have a whole webinar on that separately, but it's worth mentioning, especially because they were designed as a research project to work with students with autism. So it's a professional digital support system, and it can break down tasks like we've got on the right-hand side. You've missed the bus. So it's under the event, go shopping, but the event could be for us going to college or going to school. And there's some solutions there. So there's breathing exercises, checking the bus timetable, listening to some music, playing a game on my phone. And the idea is that people can sometimes be very competent when they're in a calm and steady place, but Brain in Hand enables people when they're maybe at a point that they're really struggling and they just need some support, and to know very clearly what they need to do in a particular situation. It's more than an app, it's an entire support system. So there's a lot involved, but it has been quite successful, and they're quite willing to talk you through the options. So I won't go into any further detail with that, but there's also emergency support there as well, with a traffic light symbol where you can hit red and get contact and get in touch with someone. So it might be a good backup symbol. And yeah, I'd be interested to hear if anyone's using Brain in Hand at the moment, or if anyone's using any of the tech that we're using at the moment. That'd be really good to hear. Yeah, Jess has asked, is anyone aware of a speaking clock that gives simpler times for those who struggle to understand? For example, 1:36 is just after 1:30. That's a good question, Jess. I'm not sure. I think we'll have to have a look into that. But yeah, let me know if anyone knows the answer to that as well. So also to support students who might not just have a visual impairment, but might also struggle to read text full stop, Microsoft Seeing AI will read text live from things around you. It's completely free. This is available on Apple devices only, so the iPhone. And it's a great app to just install by default because it has so many accessible features. I'm not going to go through all of these. This is more for kind of reference, but just a few to pull out short text, because it speaks the text as it appears in front of the camera. So to read any signs on your route that might come up, and also currency might be useful. I don't think that works with coins last time I checked. It just works with notes, but I'd imagine quite a lot are paying now contactless with cards, etc. Envision AI is an app that's available on both iOS and Android, and has a lot of the same features, so it's worth considering in place of the other. Excuse me. Right. What three words? Very clever app. So this breaks every 3 meters squared of the world into 3 words. It's available on iOS and Android. The example on the right-hand side is loud.fame.sport. Will take you to a particular point in Clifton in York. So it's really useful to help find the exact locations of things, especially when there's a lack of landmarks. Again, you'd need individuals who are quite good with tech to work with this, but it might be good for you as a team, if nothing else, to have those, so you as a team can kind of know where these landmarks are and where the locations are. And that's available on iOS and Android, but it is also available on computers, so you can load it up and show them on a larger screen. To mention wearables, so Apple Watch is a particular example of this, where it can help with your timekeeping, organization. You can have voice notes, voiceover, there's a zoom function on it, and it can give you prompts, which can help you. As with all these devices, you have to obviously bear in mind the risk to the individuals wearing kind of more expensive technology. You know, does it make them more of a target? Is it a risk? And one of the best things you can do with this is mobile and wearable payments. Some of the students that I worked with might not have been able to use cash and money and things like that, so being able to do contactless payments is really useful. Obviously you can do that with a card, but if you're struggling to get a card out or something like that, you can use wearables. So those take the form of watches, and not just kind of the Apple devices or the Android ones or Google Pay. There's also Fitbit Pay. So especially if an individual already has a Fitbit for other reasons or health reasons, you can check and just see if their devices are supported there to make payments. And it could also be a way of making sure that they get onto a bus or train safely, because they're not having to lift through things and go into pockets and things like that. There are other providers such as Universal Smart Cards, and they're worth checking out if the standard devices wouldn't work for an individual. This is one I'm quite excited about. I'd love to hear how people get on trying this with travel training. Action blocks on Androids means that you can make routine actions easier with buttons. And there's really good visuals, and it can be configured to do anything with the Google Assistant, but just in one tap. So I'm thinking specifically for travel training, being able to call a friend, family member, send a message. I'd imagine you can load up directions somewhere. Anything you can do within Google Assistant, you can do within this. And as you can see on the right-hand side, you can add pictures or symbols to these as well. So this might make it a really good option for people to contact each other's. It can be configured to speak phrases. So if you're working with students who use a communication aid, it can be a backup to that in case of emergencies. And yeah, it uses thousands of picture communication symbols, PECs by Toby Dynavox as well. There's an accessibility service, and it uses, so you can use it with switches as well. And there's a whole kind of support article around action blocks. So I think there's individuals that I worked with that I would have definitely set up a few kind of emergency call buttons with the pictures of who I wanted them to call. I think I would have set up a few directions and things like that. But and weather as well. So yeah, I'd be really interested to see what you come up with that as well. Okay, so we're coming towards the end. It's been a real whistle-stop tour, and there's lots of things around timetables and things like that I haven't covered. But transition-wise, it's worth thinking who will support the individuals with the technology after you've worked with them. Have you provided guidance for them? You know, if you can provide a guidance document for them to use that, then you can use that with all the different people that you work with. Have you provided alternatives or the backups? And when should this be reviewed? If you can give them an idea of that, then it'll be a good chance to kind of reconvene, see how it's working with the individual, and see what they can do differently. So that's the end of the webinar. As I've said, it's over to you, really. I'd love to hear if there's any unmet need, if there's anything you think, oh, well, that was okay, but what about this? Or what about that? I'd also love to hear what you're going to take away and use, and if there's anything in particular that you'd like me to focus on in a part 2 webinar for this. So I'll say thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar, and I'll keep the webinar open as long as people have got questions or want to comment or chat. So yeah, thank you, everyone.